sometimes people come into our lives and they show us red flags and we ignore them. Maybe we even help them along in their mission to cause problems for us. This is a very, very common thing to do, where we almost start to begin to self-sabotage by ignoring these red flags or by even adding to them. When we do this, we almost go to war against ourselves. We fight for them and leave ourselves in the dust. At the end of it, it blows up in our face and we sit there wondering, how did that happen? How did we get to this spot? When we consider it, we can actually see that part of it was our own way of thinking. The way we are designed to think is that we will put a lot of rules on the world. We create how we perceive our world based on patterns that we see. We come up with beliefs and values based on our experiences or what we've heard. And we go about working with others or talking to others or learning how the world is by looking for these patterns out in the world. Frequently, our brain will remind us, oh, look, kindness, that's one of the values that we were looking for. Or our subconscious will keep us on a mission to look for a certain type of person because we perceive that to be good. Genuinely, what we normally, or generally, I can't speak today, generally, what we are looking for is we look for how the world presents itself, what the issues are out in the world, what the obstacles are that we have to overcome. Then we decide how we're going to overcome that. And we come up with a plan to actually address or overcome our problems. However, whenever we're encountering a problem that fits our rules of what we are looking for, sometimes we will lean heavily on one rule and ignore the other rules. So for instance, if we have somebody who comes to us at first seeming like they're very, very kind, and then as we get to know them, we see that they're not, we may ignore that they're not and lean back onto the first primary idea that we came up with, that they were kind. So that's part of the reason that we get into ignoring red flags. So basically there's that, and then the other thing is that sometimes we assume we'll be okay because it hasn't happened before, or it hasn't happened in a long time. So we will feel safe. We won't be careful around certain people. We'll just assume, oh, well, he looks like a safe guy, or she looks like she wouldn't do that. Or we will assume that we are smarter than we are. We will assume it won't happen to us. It might happen to other people, but not to us. We're pretty smart about how we run our life. So that can happen. There's other people, though, who will actually contribute to the fire. They'll think it's no big deal what's happening. It's no big deal that they're disrespectful. You don't understand who they are. It's really like that they need me really bad. Isn't that always the way guys are? Isn't that always the way women are? Oh, that's just no big deal. So we will kind of let things go because we assume they fall into our beliefs. I'm going to tell you a story about somebody who actually contributed to, he self-sabotaged his own life. And he was involved in a relationship and there was red flags everywhere, and he contributed to it. The person I'm going to talk about is Oscar Wilde. He was a playwright and author. He was around in the late 1800s. Very, very famous guy, fabulous author. And when he was in his 40s, he met a man who was in his 20s. And the fella that he met is Lord Douglas. And they got together. The guy was a poet. And the two of them got together. And to give you a quick analysis of how their relationship was. When it came to an end, Oscar Wilde was writing a letter to him in where he talked about when Oscar Wilde was sick. Lord Douglas was nowhere to be found, but when Lord Douglas was sick, Wilde was right there by his side. Wilde was giving him money like it was going out of style. He was being treated badly. His family and friends were telling him to get as far away from Douglas as possible, and he just kept refusing, and he kept going back, he kept going back, he kept going back. The end of this story is that because of this relationship being in his life, Oscar Wilde ended up in prison. He went from the very top of society to spending 2 years in prison. So he went from the top to the very bottom. And it was all because he, was involved with this character. And when he was in prison, he wrote this letter, and later on it was published under a book called De Profundis. In that letter, he talks about, how did I get here? How did I work to this point? How did our relationship get this crazy that here I am sitting in prison at such a desperate spot? So I'm going to take some of those ideas from what he wrote and talk about ways to avoid self-sabotage in our lives. And we can kind of look at his letter for some hints on how to do that. So the first thing is, when you're thinking about it, is the problem related to one event or to one person? In this case, it was all about Douglas. All his other friends were fine. They weren't causing this much havoc as Douglas was. The second thing was his friends warning him? Yeah, his friends were going nuts trying to tell him, watch out for this guy. He's trouble, he's trouble. So if you hear that, if it's just the one person or your friends are warning you about them, there's red flags you're ignoring. Do you feel like there's something special about this? He definitely did feel that there was something special about their relationship. Probably was, because the guy was a poet. Have you told people that they just don't understand when they questioned your response or your plan? This was happening to him. He was coming up with ways to deal with issues, and it was causing him bigger problems. He was also feeling a sense of urgency about this relationship, a real sense of urgency. And I got to take care of it. It's fairly important. It was at the top of his mind. He was deciding that the risk was minimal. He was going to be okay. He could handle it. At one point, he said in the letter, I thought it was okay if I was going to be saying yes to you on the small things, because when the big thing came, I would probably be able to say no. But he wasn't. Do you have a sense of pride in relation to this? You probably do. In his case, he was feeling a sense of pride in that he was in a relationship with somebody who was making him feel good at the beginning. What can you do to avoid this heartache? Well, ways to return to your focus is do a timeline of the events to see if you can spot a pattern. Ask yourself, what makes this person so unique? Get help from friends, from family, from a coach, from therapy, anywhere you can, because sometimes other people can see what we cannot see. Every one of us has a blind spot, and many times people will show up in that blind spot, and we will cause us a lot of problems because we are interacting with it. I appreciate you listening to this, and I hope to chat with you at some time soon. If you want to learn more, go to entrusted.com, and I look forward to catching up with you at a later date. Take care now. Bye-bye.